Welcome for our science lesson this evening. In the previous lesson, we were looking at the environmental issues and recycling. And we learned that because the resources are actually depleting in our environment, we learned that the best way is to make our resources to last for longer, and that was to recycle them. Recycling resources, especially in terms of environment, so that we can meet the increasing demand of the population all over the world. It is important we consider on the factor of recycling. Therefore, we had mentioned earlier two importance of recycling, and that is where we shall pick from, and then we move on. We learned that recycling is important because it reduces the energy. It reduces the energy that is actually used to generate the raw materials. Number two, we also learned that recycling is important because it reduces the waste on landfills, and therefore making the resources that we depend on for survival, which are non-living, to survive for longer or to last for longer. On the instance that we learned that an Australian government is among the world's best recyclers so far. However, there is some areas that they produce more waste. Therefore, it is important that we emphasize on recycling of the resources that we do have on Earth, so that we continue getting their benefits for longer, and at the same time we'll be able to have saved the energy. How is an energy saved when you recycle the material? Energy is saved at a percentage of 5%. When we recycle the resources that we have, we are saving 5% of energy. Compared, for example, when we look at the resources such as now the minerals that we were looking at, one of the mineral ore that we were able to look at very careful in the mining process or in the extraction process is aluminium. It actually takes 5% of the energy to recycle an aluminium metal. That the only process that you require here is actually this process is only to melt. The process that will actually takes 5% of the energy to recycle is to melt the aluminium metal, and that one makes it less expensive. Therefore, what about the 75% energy? Where is it used? Previously, as we looked at the ores such as bauxite, an ore such as bauxite, we learned that the energy, 95% plus this 5, we come up with 100% energy. That 100% energy is the one that is used to create new metal of aluminium through the process of electrolysis. Through the process of electrolysis, energy is required here, and the amount of energy that is required is 100%. When we add this 100% energy in the process of electrolysis, we'll be able to convert, that is an oxide of aluminium oxide, into the useful metal that we have. But before that one, this has to be undergone through the process of electrolysis. Electrolysis require high amount of energy. And simply when we just convert the recycled metal of aluminium we will have saved 95% energy. Look at that. That is awesome. When we are actually living on an environment where we save 95% energy, this is better and this is bravo. It encourages that the mineral ore of aluminium or metal bauxite, where we can extract aluminium, that means we will not go for it in the next around one season, because we have simply converted this one, and this one will serve us for longer purpose. Therefore, we have allowed the mineral called the bauxite to last for longer. Therefore, we have also saved the expenses that are involved in mining processes, and that is great. That is how much we can get, especially from recycling. Let's look more details about the Australian government, how it has struggled to become the best recycler in the world, except that it follows the USA. USA is also another country that is the best in terms of recycling the raw materials, simply to convert the raw materials and make them to be used, to be reused once and again. And in that process, they are saving a lot. They are saving a lump sum amount of energy. Therefore, for us to be able to learn how to recycle the resources on earth, we should adopt the strategies. We should adopt various strategies. These strategies to maintain the environment. The strategies that we should adopt is actually to maintain the environment from not being disturbed so much in terms of the minerals that we always look at. When we maintain our local environment, we'll be able to have the best out of our planet. And therefore, our life will be more happier. When we have to do that one, there are various strategies that we'll have to do. Now, like one of the strategies is to maintain and restore the wastelands. Let us look at those wastelands. Strategy number one is to maintain, and if it is possible, let us restore the wastelands. Any land that is wasted, let us struggle to restore it. Immediately after mining, there are some landfills that are normally wasted. We refer to them as wastelands. After we have extracted a mineral oxide or an ore from a particular land, that land, what normally happen? The land is left. And when it is just left that way naturally on the environment, so for the nature to take its own course, we are making the environment to look more ugly. And anyway, we have also created the hazards, or which are very much dangerous to our life. And that one, now we are coming to the environmental issues. The local environment will be damaged. For example, if the landfills are not filled up, are not restored, are not converted for another use, for another reusable activity, then they will be wasted there. For example, if rain comes during rain season, we will have water collected in that pit holes, and then there will be a breeding site of mosquito. That will become an environmental issue because our local environment will be highly inhabited by mosquito, which now brings in another health hazard or another health factor in the environment, now causing a lot of malaria to the human being, and people will die. When we convert the wasteland, we are preserving the habitat of the vulnerable species. We'll be able to preserve the habitat for the vulnerable species. We have various species that are very much vulnerable. Sometimes they are getting extinct. And from the ecological point of view, these species are required to remain in the ecosystem for them to balance. And as a result of that, they will play a vital role. For example, kangaroos are very important on our environment. They balance the ecosystem in such a manner that some things which we look them as waste, they are used as the food for the kangaroos. And then kangaroos also sometimes they are good animals when they are just kept on land. They attract tourists who comes in to bring foreign exchange, and that is important for us to preserve them, other than leaving the environment to be extinct. What else do we need? We are looking at the general environmental strategies. What else do we need? In the area where there has been a lot of erosion, what do we know? What do we do? We have to plant what we call sea grasses. This sea grass to reduce the rate of soil erosion. Anyway, if you leave the environment, that is the crust, you make the crust exposed to various agents of erosion such as water, wind, even gravity, the environment will be worn out and it will look more ugly. Therefore, what we need to do is to plant the sea grasses so as to reduce the rate of soil erosion, especially in the areas where there has been a lot of erosion along the river banks, where the river ends up depositing out its sediments into the sea. And also we have to install the rock seals and other artificial breakwaters. We also have to install rock seals and the other artificial breakwaters. When we install what we call rock seal and other artificial breakwaters, we can call them simply dikes, we will be able to preserve the rate of erosion, and therefore look at the sediments that have been carried in the process of erosion. we will have saved a lot here, because when those sediments are deposited in the, for example, in the ocean or the sea, there will be what we call periodic floods, because the sea level or the seabed volume has reduced. Those sediments have occupied the space over which the water could have been occupying, and then it will break the waters in the sea or in the ocean, can break its bank and extend to the beaches and cause destruction and damages on the properties along the ocean, and that one will cause disastrous effect, and it become a damage or a destruction on environment. Therefore, we need to install rock seals and other artificial breakwaters such as dikes. This one also preserve the water from running at a very high speed, and therefore will be controlling the floods, which are environmental hazards. As a result of that, we also have to build what we call the beach access paths. There are some beaches along the oceans that are exposed to erosion, especially along the beaches. We have to build pitch that we call them beach access path. When we build the beach access path, we are controlling the board. We are controlling what you call the board chain of walking away. You see, when human beings move in a particular path, time in, time out, that movement in and out, there will be erosion that is carried out by animal, because the loose and consolidated materials will be transferred from point A to point B. And as a result of that, when this material have moved from here to here, they have created an open space in this path that can make it either vulnerable to some environmental hazards or issues, and then that will create a problem. But when we build the beach access path, we will have also to plant grass on those paths, so that these grass are acting as a cover. They cover the earth crust from exposing the loose and unconsolidated material to the agents of erosion. And that one reduces a lot on soil erosion, especially in the areas where we have tidal marshes and along the energetic estuaries. When we build beach access path along this area, we will have controlled the board chockway by planting grasses which act as a cover. We will control erosion, and at that we will also be beautifying our environment. Away from that, another strategy that we can adopt is to look at the construction materials. We have so many construction materials that sometime we leave them. They are wasted, and then we go to look for the new one. Such as the demolition of waste. Demolition that is demolition of waste. The demolition of wastes are recycled. For example, when some glasses were used somewhere in a constructing place, and therefore we demolished down that building, when we pick samples of the broken glasses, we can make them useful for making what you call constructing other purposes. For example, we can make it concrete blasts that can be used in tarmacking the road. We can also make some other ceramics that can be used in industry, such as the plasterboard. We can even convert them and use them for making minerals, for making them important in construction sites. We have simply converted those material into construction sites, and then we are able to come up with totally different new raw materials, such as the concrete. We can also make bricks. We can make plasterboards. We can have some ceramic that can be used in ceramic industries. After we have demolished down the construction of a given waste materials, we can recycle them, such as glasses. Even these other rubble wasted can be converted and be used in ceramic industry to make other raw materials. And as a result of that, we will be saving the energy that can be used to come up with totally new materials in the long run. And that one, we will be saving our environment. Another strategy that we can also use, because we are dealing with the environment, we can also go to improve the farming yield. Because in the farming, there is a periodic use of the synthetic fertilizer. Periodic use of the synthetic fertilizer. And once fertilizer, which are chemical, are being used year in, year out, year in, year out, what we are going to get here is that the soil will be degraded. The mineral content in the soil will be deficient, and therefore the production of the farming yields will be low. Therefore, how can we improve it once again? We have to encourage farmers to practice what we call crop rotation and sustainable agriculture. Crop rotation and sustainable agriculture. Sustainable agriculture. In that, we'll be using what we call crop rotation as a mechanism. First of all, what is crop rotation? Crop rotation is the planting of crops on a piece of land on rotational basis. And as we do that, we will be involving ourselves into sustainable agricultural practices. And therefore, we will be improving our farming yields. For example, let us learn some skills of this is a small portion of land. See, land is in its natural state. Suppose this is a piece of land, And this piece of land, you want to practice what we call crop rotation on the same piece of land. When you have decided to alternate different crops, especially you can use, for example, you can grow maize on this small portion of land, and then the leguminous crops such as beans on the next, and then another one you introduce vegetables such as the vegetables, capsicums and any other, and then here you can introduce potatoes. On rotational basis, what will happen? From this year one that you are planting this crop that is called maize, for example, in the next year you transfer this maize to go and be planted where leguminous crops have been, such as beans. And then you transfer the beans on the next portion of land. And again, the vegetables, you transfer them on the next portion of land. And therefore, the potatoes will come and begin this. This practice is what we refer to it as crop rotation, where in one portion of land, you are planting the crops on rotational basis, in that this portion of land that is you have used, you have planted maize in this part. Next year you will plant potatoes, and then where you had planted beans, you are going to plant maize, and where you had planted vegetables, you are going to plant beans. Now in the process of doing that, maize will be planted here, beans here, and then potatoes will be brought on the first portion as you plant here the vegetables. While you do that, you are conserving what you call soil fertility. That is soil conservation. You have conserved the fertility of the soil. That is the first thing you have done. Number two, you'll have saved the nutrients naturally. The nutrients are going to be recycled in the nutrients, especially nitrogen from leguminous crops such as beans, are going to be fixed in the soil. This nitrogen will be available next for maize, and the same potassium, which is also a component that is required by beans, will be available to be used by beans the following year. And then potatoes that have been here have also inserted what we call potassium or potash in the soil. Therefore, vegetables will be in use. It will be available for the use of vegetable. Therefore, in that manner, we have conserved the fertility of the soil. We have saved or recycled the nutrients. And that one is the fertilizer. We will be avoid to be using fertilizer year in and year out. And in that we have saved the money that we are buying fertilizer year in and the year out. But in the long run, when we use one type of fertilizer for a long period of time, for example, you use ammonium sulfate in the same portion of land. For example, you had just decided to plant in this portion of land maize, second year up to the fifth year. By the time you are planting crops in the fifth year, you have used ammonium sulfate. The soil will be degenerated. And at the same time, the chemical fertilizer, the synthetic fertilizer that we have used on that land, it's not going to be used 100%. There are going to be the sediments or the remains. We call them the residue. The residue that have remained in that piece of land are going to be leached out in the process of soil erosion. and therefore interfering with the water. These chemicals are going to be washed into the water bodies. And what will happen into the water bodies, such as the sea, rivers, and ocean? Oxygen will be reduced in the water, in the rivers, because of increased chemicals. And it is in the water bodies such as the sea or even the lake. What will happen if oxygen has reduced? The organisms such as fish and aquatic life will reduce. Therefore, they are going to die. Therefore, at the expense of using synthetic fertilizer periodically, we have killed aquatic animals by suffocating them from oxygen. And what will come up is hyacinth, which will be growing haphazardly in the ocean, and this one also takes a lot of oxygen and causes suffocation. Therefore, aquatic life will be interfered with. And that is why we have, when we practice what we call crop rotation, in the long run, we will have saved our environment in a great deal. That is also another strategy. Therefore, we are discussing here sustainable agriculture is by the use of also ecological conditions, such as the relationship between the organisms and the environment, and other scientific practices that are involved in farming. You can also do what we call selective breeding if you are a farmer. The farmers who keeps animal on their farm for the purposes of the production of milk, when they practice selective breeding, they will first of all improving the quality. The quality will be improved. If it is now milk, quality will improve, and then also the quantity. Quantity can also be improved. For example, you are dealing with beef animals. When you do selective breeding on the farm, it is also a way of improving the farming yields, such as you do selective breeding to increase the quality of milk production on that farm, but you have only kept around 3 to 4 cows. This can help you if you have increased the quality of milk, and then somebody else will do increase the quantity of beef, and therefore we will be staying in a harmony, so that you survive on his beef and he survive on your milk. That one is sustainable agriculture. The logic behind here is sustainability. One person specializes in producing beef animals because they are intensive. They need a lot of care, so that you monitor those animals carefully so that the quantity can be increased at the same time as the quality. Therefore, we will be practicing what we call sustainable agriculture, which involves the use of ecology. That is the relationship between organisms in a particular environment, in their relationship, and combining with other scientific practices of farming methods such as selective breeding, we will be able to make our environment very safe, and therefore people will live and stay on the environment happily. Let's look at the benefits of crop rotation. Benefits of crop rotation. Is it beneficial, or do we have any other benefits? What is the importance of crop rotation, as we have already seen that concept? It is beneficial, yes. It is more beneficial. Why? One of the benefits of the crop rotation is we avoid the buildup of pathogens. We have avoided the buildup of pathogens. The buildup of pathogens and pests. Such now, like in Africa, there has been a very dangerous pest that have infested farmers. That is the fall armyworm. That pest is a new pest which has been introduced as a result of farmers using one type of variety of seed for a period of time. Therefore, the pest has come up with some resistance on the pesticides. Therefore, it has become a pathogen on the environment. And when these pests, we have reduced them, we will have saved the type of plant, and therefore we will plant the crops and yield maximum production. Therefore, one of the benefit is that you avoid the buildup of pathogens and the pests that often occur when only one type of plant is grown continuously. We avoid the buildup of pathogens and pests that occur when only one type of crop is grown continuously. That is one benefit. Another benefit is that it improves the soil structures. Crop rotation improves soil structure. And therefore soil fertility. The soil structure and soil fertility will be improved by alternating the deep-rooted and the shallow-rooted crops. By alternating the deep-rooted and shallow-rooted crops. On that small portion of land. Another importance is that it balances the soil fertility demand. Crop rotation balances the fertility demand. Balances the fertility demand on the soil from various crops. Various crops will have a balance in the fertility or the nutrients that are demanded from the soil or from various crops, and that one we will avoid nutrients depletion. And avoid nutrients depletion. If we have avoided the nutrients depletion on the land or on our environment, that means sustainability of life as well as sustainability of the farming practices in terms of increasing the farm yields have been sustained, and therefore we will have enough food. Food is a resource that is highly required, remember, for the purpose of the increasing demand. When the population increases carelessly in a given country, there will be either food crisis. And when there is a food crisis and the farmers in that particular country or in that particular regions have not yet adopted strategies to improve the farming yields, the country or that region will suffer. Food is quite important there. And when we practice that one, we'll be able to improve the quality. Therefore, also selective breeding in this manner of crop rotation will improve the quality of the products and therefore enhances life. We have been able to look at the around 5 benefits of crop rotation as an issue that we have to practice it on our environment for sustainability. After we have looked on the environmental issues, it has been so much interesting all through the series of lessons we have been looking into about the formation of rocks on Earth's surface, different types of rocks, and how they are formed, minerals on Earth's surface, the effects of weathering and erosion on the environment, and also adopting some few strategies on how to improve our environment. Therefore, we have been able to look at various parts on this lesson, and that is very much crucial. I would like us to wind up by looking into this revision quiz. We will be able to look at this revision quiz. I will quickly write them on board. Therefore, we can have time to discuss them. One question on the previous topic. These are questions that cut across. What is weathering? Might meet such a question somewhere. And then state 3 types of weathering. State 3 types of weathering. Question 3 asks, using a diagram, illustrate how frost action occur. Using diagram, illustrate how frost action occur. Then question 4, give the meaning of erosion. Give the meaning of erosion. Question 5, state 4 agents of erosion. State 4 agents of erosion. Question 6, we'll be able to look at state the 3 types of rocks that are found on Earth's crust. State 3 types of rocks found on Earth's crust. Let us have a look at this question. The question is asking, what is weathering? What is weathering? What is weathering? From the previous lesson, when we were looking various types of weathering, we defined weathering, and that was its meaning. We learned that weathering is the chemical and the physical breakdown of rocks in situ. Is simply the chemical and the physical breakdown of rocks in situ. That is much more about weathering. What about the 3 types of weathering? Are you able to remember some of them? Actually, we learned 3 types of weathering, and one, we had physical weathering, chemical weathering, and biological weathering. That is the 3 types of weathering. 3 types of weathering. Using a diagram, illustrate how frost action occurs. You use a diagram and you illustrate how frost action occurs. We learned that frost action is one of the processes under which physical weathering occurs. And as a result of that, frost action occurs in areas where there is low temperatures, especially in mountainous region, where the rocks of the earth during the day they are subjected to great heat, and as a result of that they get hot, and then in the process of expanding and contracting they create what we call crevices. They will create crevices, and then water will be collected in these crevices, and then eventually when water collects, I will use this symbol, water will be collected here, and then it will be frozen. Water will be frozen during the evening and create what we call ice. During the day, when the ice melts, it will cause stress on the rock, and therefore what will happen? The crevices will have increased in size. The crevices will have cracked more and increased in size. As a result of that, eventually the periodic expanding and cooling of this type of a rock will lead to this portion to peel off and break away. In that manner, you have used a diagram to illustrate. You have used a diagram to illustrate the cracks have increased or the cracks have enlarged. In the process, the crack will continue on this part, and then it will cause stress on the rock. Then it will peel off and break away. And the process of breaking of the crustal rocks is what we refer to as weathering. That is how you can use a diagram to illustrate how frost action occurs. Let's look at question 4. Give the meaning of erosion. What does it mean by the word erosion? What does it mean by the word erosion? We learned that after the materials have been weathered down, those fragments, the ones that have been broken down into smaller particles, some of them will remain loose and simply they will be eroded. Therefore, what is erosion? Erosion simply means is the movement of the broken down materials from one place to another. Erosion simply means is the movement of the broken down materials from one place to another. That is, there are various agents that actually facilitate the movement. And that is the next question asking us, state 4 agents, the agents of erosion. Now, the question required the agents of erosion. And there are actually 4 agents we mentioned earlier in the previous lesson. Water is one of them. Glacier is the second one. We also have wind and the gravity. We have wind and the gravity. Therefore, that is about the agents of erosion. Question 6 says that state 3 types of rocks that are found on earth crust. There are actually 3 types of rock that we learn in our topics. There are 3 types of rocks. And this one is simply, we have, one is igneous rock. We have igneous rock. Or rocks. And then number 2, we have sedimentary rocks. Very simple. You can guess number 3. Number 3 is metamorphic. Metamorphic rock. These are various types of rocks that are easily found on earth crust. There are 3 of them, that is igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. There is an abbreviation that you can get and make a name out of it, or miss. Both of them, this abbreviation can help us to remember quickly. This one is sedimentary, igneous, and then metamorphic. If you use this one, this is metamorphic, igneous, and then sedimentary. That can easily help us to remember quickly. Lastly, I'll look at this question that says, outline 3 processes of sedimentary rock. Outline 3 processes. Outline 3 processes. Outline 3 processes. Outline 3 processes that leads to the formation of sedimentary rock. That leads to the formation, is it sedimentary? Sedimentary rocks, yes. 3 processes that are involved in the formation of sedimentary rock. We had mentioned them earlier. You can write down the 3 C's. 1 C is for compaction. And then another C is for cementation. And then lastly is crystallization. These are the three processes that lead to the formation of sedimentary rock. I want to draw this chart for you to be able to answer it. Then we will have come to an end of our topics. This one is weathering. Then this one is labeled Y. This process is labeled X. Then the question asks, first of all, that is A, is write 5 brief statements to summarize the rock cycle. Statements to summarize the rock cycle. And then name the factors represented by letters. Name the factors represented by the letters X and Y. Having looked at this was a rock cycle, is a representation of the rock cycle. When you check it very careful, they have given us one process, that is weathering. That this is igneous rocks coming to sedimentary, and then from sedimentary coming to metamorphic rocks, and then back to igneous rocks. And they also the process labeled X and Y. These have to be identified. Then by doing so, I feel that you can attempt this question for yourself, and then you can communicate the feedback to us. Then we will be able to have come to an end of this topic about the rocks and the environmental issues, including the minerals. I hope you have had a good evening, have enjoyed the lessons, have a good day. Thank you.